Welcome to the Wisconsin Assembly District 43 Candidate Forum, presented by OCA Media and the Oregon Observer. The candidates tonight are Democrat Jenna Jacobson from Oregon, Wisconsin, and Republican Marisa Voelkel from Janesville, Wisconsin. Jacobson is a housing program specialist and is serving her third term as a Village of Oregon trustee. Voelkel is a registered nurse and healthcare worker, currently working for an international organization as a physical environment specialist. The 43rd Assembly District the candidates are running to represent encompasses part of Dane County, including Oregon and Stoughton, all the way down into Rock County and the outskirts of Janesville. Now, let's go live to our forum, moderated by Oregon Observer Community Editor Tara Jones.
Hi, good evening, everybody. I am Tara Jones, and I am the Managing Editor with the Oregon Observer. We have partnered with OCA Media to bring you a candidate forum tonight. We are here with the State Assembly District 43 candidates. To my right, to my left, the other left, we have Jenna Jacobson, and to my right we have Marisa Voelkel. Thank you both for joining us today. Just some quick background and some introductory on what you can expect to see out of the forum here today, just as a reminder for our candidates and for you all watching and listening at home. So Jenna Jacobson, she is a familiar face here. She is the Democratic candidate out of the Village of Oregon. She is currently serving in her third term as a Village of Oregon trustee and previously worked as a housing program specialist for Dane County. And then Marisa Voelkel. She is our Republican candidate out of the town of Janesville. She is a registered nurse and works for an international organization as a reviewer and educator on healthcare regulatory compliance. A little bit about the format here today. We will begin with opening statements from both candidates. That will last about 2 minutes. They will each have 2 minutes to reply. And then we will dive into our question and answer portion. We have 7 questions here today. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to respond to each question, and we will be alternating with who takes turns going first. And then we will have 2-minute closing statements from each candidate. And then that's our forum today. Any questions at all before we get started? No. Excellent. Okay, well, we flipped a coin to see who would be going first. It wasn't that pretty, but we got through it. Marisa Voelkel, you will be starting with our 2 minutes whenever you're ready for your opening statement.
Thank you, Tara, and thank you, OCA and the Oregon paper and Stoughton paper for having us on. I greatly appreciate the opportunity to talk to you about my candidacy. So my name is Marisa Voelkel. I am a registered nurse. I am a mother of 8. I have 3 sons. They're all serving in the military at this time. And one of the reasons I decided to run this for this term, I've never run for a political office, but I was growing concerned about the distance and the disconnect between politicians that are serving in our Assembly, our Senate, at our Capitol at this point in time, with the residents and the constituents. And I've been out talking to a lot of people across the district, and there seems to be some common themes. People want to feel safe. They want public safety. They're concerned about inflation. They're choosing between medicine and food sometimes. They're concerned about how they're going to pay their property taxes as inflation is moving up and other things. They're also concerned about their kids' education and what they're gaining out of that. So taking all of that together and hearing from my own children that they're concerned about even having children in the future, I decided I could either sit by and wait for somebody else to step up or just choose to be a servant leader and step up myself. So that is what I've done. That is why I'm here and why I hope to earn your vote. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Jenna, if you would like to take it away with your opening statement.
Sure. Well, thank you, Oregon Observer, OCA Media, for having us today. I wanted to start my remarks by acknowledging the events of today and saying that I know for so many of us, we have been dealing with the explosion that happened earlier and responding to it. And I just wanted to say a quick thank you to our fire, EMS, and our police department who have been working so hard all day long to secure the scene and to make sure that everybody was evacuated safely and kept safe during this very unexpected event that happened today. So as Tara said, my name is Jenna Jacobson. I am married here with my husband of 20 years, and we have our 3 kids, raising them in the Village of Oregon. I am serving my 3rd term as a trustee, where I'm the chair of the Public Safety Committee and the chair of our Personnel and Finance Committee. I was also the vice chair of our Housing Coalition. And I have a degree in personal finance, as well as a history of being a financial analyst for a local insurance company. And I was a personal financial coach for many years, or still volunteer for that. And as Tara said, I was most recently a housing program specialist working with people experiencing homelessness. I decided to run for this seat because I think it's important to have somebody who's fighting for our shared values, representing the 43rd District. And when I'm talking to folks, the values that are coming up over and over again are the freedom to learn, the freedom to vote, and the freedom to choose. And so I intend to hear your voices and elevate your voices and bring those values to Madison. Thank you.
All right, excellent. Thank you so much. Well, with that, we will dive into our first question here. Jenna, you will have the opportunity to go first, and again, we'll just keep going back and forth until then. All right, so the first question, District 43 was one that was recently redistricted by the Wisconsin Supreme Court. How do you think the new boundaries impact what now encompasses District 43?
Well, I think the new boundaries, they've changed quite a bit, losing the entire city of Milton, but we've also gained the city of Stoughton and some of the city of Pleasant Springs, and a little bit of, I like to say, a bit of Gary Hebel's old district, a little bit of Jimmy Anderson's old district, and a lot of Don Drink's previous district. So I think, though, the bigger issue when we hear about redistricting is the fact that our map redistricting system is not representative of the will of Wisconsinites. Over and over, I'm hearing from folks that they would like to see a nonpartisan redistricting system similar to the Iowa model. They want to make sure that they are allowed to pick their representatives and not have their representatives chosen for them. And I think when we look at the map changing, it's important that we talk about the fact that if we're not using a nonpartisan system to govern not just our maps, but our whole election system, we are putting our elections, our democracy at risk, because we're letting political parties govern the will of the people instead of letting the will of the people's voices dictate our political parties.
Excellent, thank you. Do you need the question repeated, or are you good to go?
I'm good to go.
Okay, whenever you're ready.
All right, thank you. So on the matter of redistricting, I think it's important to remember that redistricting happens every 10 years based on the census. And as people move, the lines are going to shift a little bit. One of the things to be mindful of is, especially this year when redistricting happened, there were several maps that were considered. There were the legislative maps put together by the Republican-led Congress that we have in Wisconsin. There were Governor Evers maps, and then there were people maps that were put together. The key about redistricting is there are very firm rules that need to be followed that are in our Constitution about redistricting to ensure that they are not racially biased, that they do not hold demographics that are going to slant a district in one way or another. Currently, all the districts have roughly about 58,000 people per district. So it does look a little bit like an etch-a-sketch as people go through and look at them. 43rd did change quite significantly. There's no guarantee every 10 years that the current incumbent is actually going to live in the district when they start changing the lines. Again, we got to remember this is about people moving. So as people move in and out of areas, and these are greatly impacted in our high population areas like Madison and Milwaukee, it is going to shift the districts. So one of the things that we have to remember is there are rules that are in our Constitution. Those have to be followed. And as we saw this year, some of those maps went up even to our Supreme Court to be reviewed to make sure those rules were followed. And the ones that followed those rules are the ones that we have today.
Excellent, thank you. All right, for our second question, kind of along those same lines here. The Village of Oregon actually lies on the outskirts of the town, a bit of an etch-a-sketch, kind of like you mentioned there. So the Village of Oregon lies on the outskirts of the district that you would be representing. How will you ensure that the constituents of Oregon will be well represented? And again, Marisa, you will be going first this time.
Thank you. I don't look at the redistricting lines as a boundary. I know that it is, but it's not so much of you live here or you live there and therefore you only have so much voice. I look at it as our responsibility as representatives to represent all 58,000 people. That's children, that's elders, that's families, no matter what kind of lifestyle they have, what kind of trade they have, profession or whatnot. So every single individual deserves to be heard, to be represented, and to be served within the district. The key is it doesn't matter which one of us wins. There are going to be people on different political sides. Are you going to have a representative that is going to go to Madison and fight for those that are working as remote employees for big corporations, for those that are single parents that are at home with their kids, that are homeschooling in public schools, that are running small businesses, that are farmers, that are skilled tradesmen? That's what we're looking for, is someone that's willing to listen to and hear every single person and take that collective common concern to Madison to work on the laws, work on the budget, and represent them all. It also requires diligence on our parts to participate in all of those communities. I myself have been to, just in September, there was a first responders event, in which case they were celebrating the police, the fire, and EMS here. It was a great event. It was a decent turnout that was put on by the community. So we just need to make sure that, whichever one gets elected, please invite us, let us know what's going on, and ask us to be involved. I, for one, will be there.
Excellent, thank you. Jenna, same question to you.
So I think that it is important as your representative to make sure that you're hearing all voices across the district and make sure that you're bringing those ideas together, building coalitions throughout your community and all of the communities in the district, no matter what their political beliefs, which is why when I'm out in the district, I'm talking to folks on the doors, Democrats, Republicans, independents, hearing what their concerns are and feeling very privileged that they choose to share some of their worries that is keeping them up at night, sharing their hopes for the future and what they would like to see in Madison. And we do that not only at the doors, showing up at your home sometimes as a surprise, but also at events. I spend a lot of time showing up at different events, not only that I'm invited to, but reaching out to organizations and saying, I think we have some of the same shared values and I'd like to learn more about your organization. And then people are totally willing to educate you on what they're passionate about and what they would like to see done in Madison. And so it's not just about being invited, I think it's also reaching out to folks and taking that extra step to say, I'm here, I'd like to listen, you're important to me, and your beliefs are important to me.
Excellent, thank you. On to our third question. We're going to kind of continue along that same vein here. So many of your Dane County neighbors will be represented by another district assembly member. How will you ensure that how will you go about working closely with those members to make sure that the needs of all Dane County residents are being met? Jenna, you'll be going first.
So this is something that I've worked on as not only as a community member, but on the village board, of learning my different representatives throughout Dane County and reaching out to them, having coffee, just getting to know folks, their styles, and how we can collaborate in the future. So I think I've already started that work by reaching out to candidates that are running for office in Dane County and talking to currently elected officials. I'm pleased to be endorsed by Representative Don Druink, Representative Lisa Subeck, Representative Diane Hesselbein, and again, building relationships with representatives throughout Dane County to make sure that we can work together where we have common ground. And that isn't, in my opinion, that's not just to Dane County. I've also been reaching out to representatives in Rock County, because this district also has Rock County, and Greene County, because it's not just Dane County, although that is a large chunk of this district, but it's about making relationships throughout the counties of the district and throughout the state, frankly, so that we can get things done for Wisconsinites.
Absolutely. And same question, Marisa.
All right, thank you. So I think, to be fair, as Jenna mentioned, she is reaching out to candidates that are running under the Democrat Party, and I am working with candidates running under the Republican Party, because we're in an election cycle. So we are clear with those boundaries because we're both running for the same seat. That said, I have a long history of working with people across the aisle. That's what I do for a living. I work with regulatory compliance. I work with code statutes and trying to make sure that healthcare organizations across our United States are being compliant with the rules that are there. That means working with a wide array of personalities and individuals to reach a common goal and to get to common ground. And as far as a representative, that's what we're supposed to do. That said, we're one of 99. So we have to get 98 other people to get to that same common ground with us. But we are supposed to be your champions. We're supposed to be your advocates across the board with everyone that's in Capitol Hill so that we are supporting that common ground and trying to get to the common goal together collectively to support Wisconsinites, to help make your lives better, and in my case, to keep more of your money in your pockets, to make sure that you're running your businesses the way that you want to run them, and that our kids are being set up for success and you're safe in your communities.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
All right, our fourth question here, we're going to change speed a little bit. So inflation is at the forefront of everyone's minds today. If elected, what are your plans to help address that at the state level? And Marisa, you'll be going first.
Thanks for asking that question. I actually had a wonderful conversation today with a gentleman at his door because he asked almost that exact same question. Okay, how are you going to do this? So currently we have a nearly $5 billion projected surplus for our budget. Now that's taxpayer money. Some of that came from not necessarily from overtaxation, but because we had COVID and a lot of places shut down and money just didn't get spent that should have been spent beforehand or would have been if we hadn't had a pandemic. So one of my plans is multifold. First, I'd like to see the property taxes and income taxes reduced for all Wisconsinites. They're facing an 8% consumer index right now for that's inflation across the board, especially right here in Oregon. I know that there's a 10% levy that's already been added, and that will be added to property taxes. So we need to get that property tax down, and the only way to do that and to work on the income tax, so let's take example of flat tax. Our lowest income has a 3.5% rate. If we go to say, I'm just making up numbers, a 5% flat rate, we have a gap there. So we have to make sure we cover that gap, and that's what that surplus would help do, to kind of re-regulate these, to get the money back in your pockets, but still take care of all the important things we need in infrastructure, transportation, schools, and so forth. One of the other things that I'd really like to do with this money is set up a way to cap those that are on fixed incomes due to disability or retirement or so forth, so that they don't keep having their taxes go up. I talked to several people that are literally putting their houses on the market today because they can't afford to live here anymore, and that's a shame.
Excellent. Thank you for the answer. Jenna, same question.
Yeah, so I have been and am supportive of both of Governor Evers' plans to spend the projected surplus that included adding more money to our education system, that included a 10% tax cut to the middle class. And I think that those are some good starts, some good conversation starters as far as how to help folks with inflation, because if we are funding our schools properly, then we don't have to look at going a referendum like we're doing currently in the Village of Oregon. But I think we also need to be talking about shared revenue, and we need to be talking about the levy limit caps that are ways that the state has made it harder for villages like Oregon to fund their services. And if the state would get it together and start talking about those issues and look how they can address shared revenue and funding our municipal governments, funding our education, then communities like the Village of Oregon wouldn't have to look at raising property taxes, because that is not what our community needs right now. But they also want the services of municipal government. I think that we can also look at expanding the child tax credit. We have a match that's not quite 100%. We can look at expanding that, because we can't necessarily address the cost of food or the cost of gas, but we can look at some other ways that the state government has a role in people's lives, like childcare, and offering a tax credit with that surplus that we have.
All right, excellent. Thank you. We are on to question number 5 here. So affordable housing continues to be an issue not only in this area, but across the state and the nation. What steps do you believe need to be taken to address this? Jenna, you'll be going first.
Yeah, so I think that The affordable housing issue is complex. A lot of our funding comes from the federal government, so we're governed by those rules, but there definitely is opportunities at the state level. I think first and foremost, making the process easier for developers to create affordable housing would be helpful. There's a very complicated formulas that developers have to follow through with, and a lot of red tape, frankly. And I understand that we do that in an effort to make sure that we're getting good developments, make sure that they are being built in a way that is helpful for the people who need it the most. But I also believe that there has to be ways that we can find efficiencies and make it easier for people to get those projects built. We, with my time at the Housing Coalition and as a trustee in the village, that was some of the work that we focused on, making sure that our policies here in the Village of Oregon were as helpful as possible to folks who are looking to come make developments in our village that would expand our affordable housing. And now we have 3 projects in various stages of development. And we were able to partner with an already existing project to make sure that it got updated so that the residents there could have quality affordable housing, which is, I think, from my opinion, part of the affordable housing conversation that we don't focus on as much, which is that the housing needs to be quality. Just because folks are low income doesn't mean they don't deserve a great place to live. So I think, again, making that path a little bit smoother, making those regulations more consistent throughout our rural and urban communities would be a great place to start.
Thank you. All right, same question about affordable housing.
All right, thank you. I think there's a big difference in affordable housing, such as what Jenna talked about, and a program to make sure that housing's available for low income and other types of people, and being able to afford to live in your home. And that's really what we're dealing with today. We have unprecedented inflation. It hasn't been this way in over 30 years. Some are projecting we're headed towards a recession. People are paying anywhere from 40 to 50% more at the grocery store, at the gas tank, and just taking care of their basic needs. We also have, in this local area, like I said, an 8% consumer index rate. We have the 10% levy. There's a referendum on for many schools across the state, including in Oregon, which will add another 15% to property taxes over 3 years. That's a 33% increase. And most people, even if they got a 10 or 15% raise, is not going to be able to afford that. Like I said, I'm talking to people across this district. Dane County, Rock County. Rock County has a new jail that is going to be built, $96 million jail. And we're all going to be taxed for that through our property taxes. So if you're talking about the ability to afford to live in your home, we really need to look and protect and figure out ways to help our low-income individuals, are those that are on fixed incomes or disabilities, our elders and our seniors that have paid into this state with their blood, sweat, and tears for many, many years and decades, as well as the parents that are just trying to get their kids through school. So big difference in the way we want to approach it, but I want to make sure that you can stay in your homes.
Excellent, thank you. All right, on for the 6th question here, again, another national topic. After the overturn of Roe versus Wade by the U.S. Supreme Court, Wisconsin is operating under a near total abortion ban. Do you believe the 1849 ban should be overturned or upheld, and why? Marisa, you will kick us off.
Thank you for asking that question. So I bring a unique perspective to this because, and I've shared this in other interviews, so anybody can go check this. When I was 14, I was raped. 30 years ago, I chose to have an abortion. Then I got married and had kids, and I had twins. And in the middle of that, they were 6 weeks along, my appendix burst. And I was given the choice to either have surgery or suffer through it. I suffered through, and now I have 2 20-year-olds that bring me a lot of joy and a lot of angst at times. And I've also been a labor and delivery nurse. So I've held the hands of many women who have lost children either by choice or by birth or by accident or medical procedure. Not a single one of them didn't suffer emotionally from that. It is trauma, one way or another. What I want to do with this, first off, the 1849 law does not prohibit any woman under any circumstance for medical risk to be treated. It's different. It's a different procedure. An abortion is a willful act to terminate that pregnancy based on convenience or out of birth control. It's a very narrow division. So there have been abortions performed across this state because of ectopic pregnancy. At least they're calling them abortions. It's a medical procedure. There's a whole host of things that can happen. I am pro-life. I believe in that all life is sacred. So we need to protect the mothers and the babies. Right now it's in court. And until that ruling comes down, there's not a lot we can do about it. But I can tell you right here today, if any mother is pregnant and has a medical condition, please go talk to your doctor. They can take care of you, and they should.
Thank you. Jenna, same question to you.
So I believe that the 1849 law should be repealed, and I believe we should be decriminalizing abortion. I believe that the limits on abortion should be dictated between a woman and her doctor. And while I appreciate that my opponent has just shared her personal story, and I imagine that wasn't easy, the highlight that I heard from that story is that there was a choice there, a choice on whether to have an abortion or not. And now that choice has been taken away. And I think that that is a shame, that all women should have the right to choose how they treat their bodies, if they want to go through a pregnancy, and what that looks like in consultation with their doctors. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we are on to our final question here. This has been referenced several times here, so we're going to end with some school funding here. So as we have mentioned, several school districts in the state of Ohio, including the one right here in Oregon, have a referendum on the ballot coming up next month. Most of them have cited a lack of state funding as the reason to going into referendum. If you were elected, how would you handle the upcoming years to financially support the schools? Jenna, you'll be starting us off.
So first, I think we need to look at that budget surplus. As I mentioned previously, the governor has proposed in two different instances for, additional funding for our schools that could have, in some cases, reduced the referendum or potentially eliminated a referendum, not necessarily in the Village of Oregon, but in some research that I did. In the 8 districts that this 8 school districts, that the Assembly District impacts, almost all of them have gone through a referendum in the past 6 years. And I can't help but wonder if we could have a state legislature that would have the conversation how we could have impacted those referendums, which is essentially a property tax hike. And so I think that we need to get our taxpayer money back to us, and then we need to address the formula. Our formula hasn't been reevaluated in decades, and I think it, although it was probably a great effort at the time, it is not addressing the disparities between our lower income and our rural schools and then our suburban schools. It is not allowing the state to, it is not allowing our education system to be setting our kiddos up for success, giving our teachers and their staff the tools that they need to make sure that our children thrive, both these upcoming generations and generations in the future.
Excellent, thank you. Same question.
No, okay, say the question again. I'm sorry, I was thinking.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So several school districts are going to referendum this
Yes.
November. How would you handle the upcoming years to financially support school districts?
Sure. So I did do a lot of research into the budget numbers on this, and our budget, one of the things that was promised by Tommy Thompson is that the schools would be funded at 2/3 by the state. That has been achieved this budget cycle. Every year the budget has gone up, and what has been sent to DPI has gone up. What all of schools in this district have received has gone up each year. So just since 2019, $700 million in this state has been spent on education. They also received $2.6 billion from COVID money for the last 2 years. There has been over $112 million put into mental health services, special education, and making sure that there's grants available for schools. So there is a great deal of money already going to schools. I think one of the things that with these referendums, we're talking about property taxes going up, which hurts people whether or not they have kids in school, if they're grandparents and so forth. Now, I'm not against teachers at all. We have some amazing teachers out there that are undervalued, underpaid, and need to be supported. What I'm concerned about is the administrative burden and putting so much paperwork on teachers that they're spending time doing that instead of teaching our kids and making sure that they get their proficiency rates up. Because by and large across this state and even in this district, the number of kids that are proficient is much less than the number that are not proficient. And since it's rolled together between advanced, which is only achieving high scores in one of 4 categories instead of all of them, we're really not sure of those numbers. But I'd really like to see that the referendums really get reviewed in light of the funding and are transparent and clear with what that money is going through, and making sure that the community is able to see that on an annual basis. Where is the money spent, and how is the state money being used for that?
All right, thank you. That concludes the question and answer portion here. So we will again open up for closing remarks since Marisa kicked us off for the opening. Jenna, if you will kick us off with your closing remark for 2 minutes.
Thank you. Well, thank you again, Tara, OCA Media, the Oregon Observer, everybody who's joined us tonight or will be streaming it later. I appreciate you taking the time to learn about us. My name is Jenna Jacobson. Again, I'm the Democratic candidate for the 43rd Assembly District. I am married to my husband of 20 years and live in the village with our 3 kiddos, and I'm serving my 3rd term on the village board. I'm currently the chair of the Public Safety Committee and the chair of the Personnel and Finance Committee. I have also been the vice chair of our Housing Coalition, which was a broad group of folks from around the village working to address affordability in Oregon. I'm running because I would like to make sure that our values are represented in the 43rd District. The values of freedom, the freedom to vote, the freedom to learn, and the freedom to choose. And when I'm out talking to folks, people are really concerned about having those values and so many more represented at the Capitol. So I plan to stand up for you all, stand up with you, and fight for those values in the Capitol. And I encourage you to vote for me on November 8th. Thank you.
Thank you. Marisa, closing statements.
Thank you, Tara, and thank you everyone for tuning in tonight and for putting this on. I greatly appreciate it. So something that wasn't said is I do have a registered nurse license, and I have done that in labor and delivery, but I also have an MBA. So I have a master's in business administration. I've owned and operated businesses. I've been in charge of multi-million dollars for different projects. So working with a state budget, I get it. We have to balance it. We need to make sure that what we're spending our money on, we get a return on investment so that we can continue to support those programs or departments and so forth. I think one of the differences you may have heard is my opponent is looking for government to use more of your money versus where I want to put more of the money back into your wallets and to let you choose how that money is spent. I also want to make sure that our retirees and those that are on disabilities and fixed incomes, that they're staying at their homes. And not only that, that they're staying in Wisconsin. There's a number of people I've talked to at the doors. The way that things have been going the last couple of years, they're looking to sell their homes and move out of state. Wisconsin is a beautiful state that has so much to offer. I love it here. My family loves it here. We have no plans to leave. And we just want to make this a place where people not only want to come here, start businesses, start families, and start lives, but stay here, retire here, and continue to enjoy everything that Wisconsin has to offer. I also want to bring up the fact that one of the biggest differences when it comes to abortion is I believe we need checks and balances, and we need to support all life, where what I'm hearing is that between a mother and a baby, it could go as far as full term, and I don't think that's quite right. We need good leadership. We need someone to be a servant leader and represent each and every one of you. So I hope you will consider voting for me on November 8th. Thank you, Tara.
Thank you, Marisa. And thank you both for participating. We appreciate some of the drive that you guys had to put in, you guys taking out the time on this Friday night to be here. Thank you all again for listening, for watching. This will also be back streaming on OCA Media's YouTube if you want to go back and watch or watch this a little bit later. Again, the polls open on November 8th, so hopefully we all can see you there regardless of which candidate you'll be voting for today. If you have any questions on the upcoming election, OCA Media and the Oregon Observer have covered this election quite thoroughly, if I do say so myself. Again, I am managing editor with the Observer, Tara Jones. We'd like to again thank you for OCA Media on partnering with us to bring you this candidate forum. And again, thank you all. We appreciate it.
Thank you.